Hey everybody, sorry about the late show. I'm kidRiot, and actually sucking down a cough drop right now, making sure my coughing is minimized because I know it's going to be a bit distracting. But anyway, let me see, make sure this works. Please work. Okay, good. I'm kidRiot. Obviously, it says down there. But today I'm going to pull a little old man ride on you guys. There's been a lot of controversy in going on. Oh, oops. There's been a lot of controversy going on in Farmers League recently. And for those of you that don't know, Farmers League is a 6v6 tournament hosting, at least right now, only North American teams. And the finals is actually tomorrow at 3:15 p.m. Pacific. And the controversy obviously is a character or a player called Therum, and a lot of the stuff that people think of what he's doing or anything like that, like they think he's a lot of the accusations are warp or lag switching. People say he's using net limiter, and in my experience, I mean that I should probably preface it by saying there's a lot of different ways to look at a competition, right? And we're not talking about like esports or sports, but just like the nature of competition itself. You know, like you could look at it as, you know, a player, somebody that's actually involved in the competition. You could look at it as a, you know, an observer, either in the form of like a coach, a manager, or even just like us, you know, people that watching this thing on Twitch. And there's a huge difference in perspective when you're doing that. As a competitor, your desire is to win. Some people, you know, for whatever reason say, you know, win at all costs. Other people are a little more noble about it. But as a viewer, it's really easy to lose sight of what's important or what's going on, right? The narrative, the story. And that's really what the human element is about in competition, right? That everybody has a story. Every player has a story. Every coach has a story. And you see it a lot in sports, you know, like on ESPN, or even if you're talking about like esports, you know, people, I think Evil Geniuses just produced a video on this player called Balrog. He's a Street Fighter player. And so every person comes at this with a story, right? Ultimately, no matter what's going on screen, it's really easy to disconnect yourself from what you're watching, right? Because even in Planetside 2, there's a lot of comments about, you know, there's like a negative connotation to players that aren't as good as other players. And people say, oh, they're like AI, or there's a term a lot of people use on Reddit, you know, the shitters, things like that. And so the assumption is that it devalues them in a way, right? But ultimately in Planetside 2, which is going to change pretty much with the turret patch, everything you see, and this is one of my favorite aspects of it, everything that you see that's moving is controlled by a person sitting in their home, you know, using a mouse and keyboard. And that's really important in the context of what's being discussed right now on Reddit, because ultimately, at the end of the day, there's always more to the story. You know, it's not as simple as looking at somebody and seeing like a movement and saying, okay, well, this is what's happening. It has to be this. He has to be cheating, or he has to be doing this. It's not that simple. There's always more to the story, and unfortunately, like I know a lot of the people involved. Personally, I don't know Therum, so I can't really comment on him. But I do know the leadership of Recursion, both personally, you know, and in game. Some of the guys in Recursion I've known for over 10 years. You know, old hostile takeover players like Rang, Fiverr, people like that. You know, it's almost like my brothers in a way. And so what I'm going to say isn't necessarily defending them, you know, blindly. It's just knowing the fuller story of what I think is happening. And so I'm going to switch here to a Smashville Planetside gameplay so you don't get tired of seeing my ugly mug. So it's important to note, and especially when I've heard a lot of the stuff that was been going on, who Recursion is and why I think it's important, right? And why is a huge question. It's not just what people think Therum is doing, or what they think Recursion is doing, you know, by supporting their player. It's the why, and the why to me is a massive question. You know, it's people's motivation. It's people's reasoning for either justifying or being in denial or doing what it is that they do. And when you talk about Recursion, you have to understand like the history. And yeah, for the record, I helped create Recursion with Lithka, but I honestly haven't had anything to do with the outfit in a long time. It's been about a year. And Lithka, Rang, I'm not sure who exactly all the officers are, and I know I looked at the outfit list, I think earlier today. I know that Rang is still, you know, around in the picture, Cell's in the picture, and Lithka is in the picture. And I've met Rang and Lithka you know, at SW Live. Rang, I've talked to. He lives a few hours away from me. He's a really good guy. We actually hooked up one time for a StarCraft 2 tournament. It was pretty fun to watch a LAN. And these guys are very competitive in the sense that they like to improve. They like to do crazy stuff, you know, like regardless of what you think about Recursion, like they're the type of outfit, and there's a lot of outfits like that that put themselves in situations where the odds are against them. And they don't do this to, you know, to, how would you say, to brag about it, right? To put it out there. They do this for like themselves, for the outfit. And so they're competitive in the sense that they really want to self-improve. And I think at the heart of any competition, regardless whether you're like a Navy SEAL or you know, an esport guy or a Planetside 2 player or whatever it is, the nature of competition is that you always want to improve. You know, the motivations are always different, but at the heart is that you want to improve. And so Recursion is like that. And to me, the reason I, even now that I'm not a part of Recursion, but that I consider them friends and good people, good men, is because of who they are, because of their why. You know, their motivation to do things is because they love the game, they love the community, and I mean their community and the Planetside 2 community. Like, I honestly, knowing the leadership of Recursion, don't see them saying, okay, we know Ethereum is doing this. This is an assumption. We know Ethereum is, say, whatever it is he's doing, and so we're going to work around that, and we're going to use that to our advantage to win. That it's completely uncharacteristic of them. And yeah, there's always the case. There's always maybe a percentage where, you know, maybe it's true, right? You can't deny that, because, you know, like I say, denial is a river in Egypt. So there's always the possibility that, yeah, it is true, but I would bet money, or even whatever it is, that isn't true. And so you really have to understand people's whys, you know, and then you get to the other side of the coin, which is the players that are affected by it, right? The teams that have played against Recursion. And I know, even just outside of Planetside 2, how frustrating it is to play against somebody that you just can't wrap your head around, right? You can't defend them properly. Like, I used to play a lot of soccer, or even like in cross country, I used to run a lot, track and field, where no matter how hard you pump your arms, no matter how hard you try and be better and push yourself, you know, and push back past the mental fatigue, push back the physical fatigue, you know, the lactic acid in your legs weighing you down, and you're doing your best, you're running your heart out, and there's this person just pushing by you, like almost effortlessly. And it's always a sense of, yeah, I did what I could, I did my best, and that's a good feeling, but there's also the sense of, damn, like I wish I could have beaten him. There's a lot of emotion involved, you know, and that's why we love sports, that's why we love esports, because of all the drama, right, of all the intrigue, all like, you know, what about this, all the questions. And so when you're involved, and like I was saying earlier, when your perspective is that of the player, it's really, really easy to get emotionally charged by what's happening. The problem with that is, I mean, it's good, it's great, because it shows that you're invested in what you're doing, and it shows that you care. But sorry, I'm not actually showing really good gameplay footage, I'll just go back. But the problem with that is that it's really easy to go from actually caring and having an invested interest in what you're doing to kind of like losing sight of what's important, losing sight of the whys, losing sight of the fact that everybody has a story. And so it's really easy to go from saying, I think this is happening, to a full-blown witch hunt. And in Planetside 2, yeah, it's a small community, but the history of it is that there's been a lot of witch hunts. I mean, you've had players from outfits like Future Crew get banned. You've had players from, I don't know, like, there's been a lot of really top players that have gotten banned. Maybe because the system was different back then, or whatever it is. So there's always been a lot of questions about the legitimacy of players. And when you think somebody's hacking, I mean, one of the worst things, and even like if I die, but luckily I haven't experienced it too much. If somebody shoots at me and I die, and I feel like hacking, I feel cheated, right? I feel like it wasn't fair. And there's this feeling of, like I said, it's just the response is emotional. And when you get a bunch of people, it just multiplies. And that's when you get your witch hunts, you know, that's when you get the blame game, people pointing fingers. And honestly, I don't like that. I don't like the idea that, I mean, it happens a lot in different communities, but I don't like the fact that in the community I care so much about, that there's a lot of bullying going on. Regardless of what Ethereum is doing or not, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about people pointing fingers, people jumping on, you know, Reddit threads or Twitter or whatever it is and saying this is what's happening. Because, I mean, it's a fact of life. And I was even talking to some people earlier about this, that, for an example, like the example I gave was, say I'm talking to two of my friends, and I say, did you hear about Kobe? Like, you know, he didn't play well because his ankle was hurt. And so people take this, and it's hearsay, right? Like, I'm just basically BSing, like just acting like I know what I'm talking about, which a lot of people do. I mean, if you really listen to people in general, they do that a lot. They take information and act like an authority on it. And so if I'm convincing enough, charming enough, you know, compelling enough, somebody's going to take what I said as fact and keep, you know, regurgitating it. They're going to say it to the next person, the next person. Hearsay is powerful because people aren't really willing to look at the issue. And so it's really easy to kind of jump on that train and just start saying, this is what's happening. I know this is what's happening. There's no way this is not happening. And my idea, the whole purpose of me talking about this isn't to prove whether Ethereum is doing A or B or C. It's to say, just look at it differently. You know, be intelligent about your responses. Be responsible for what you're saying, you know, and just be accountable. Like, just listen to what people say. And that's why I have the to upgrade to listen now. Because if you just really listen to what people are saying, it allows you to actually say, well, this is BS, and this is actually potentially true. Or even if, like, they say like 5 things, you know, talking about Planetside 2 in the context, like, I feel this is happening, and because I've done this thing or I've done that thing, well, if you listen well enough, you can say, well, maybe this is actually what's happening, but let me look into it. And it's really easy to jump on the, like I said, on the, whatever you want to call it, on the train or the bandwagon and say, this is what I believe is happening. But I just implore people to show, you know, give some effort. Even if your opinion is unpopular, and I know even me talking about this right now is somewhat an unpopular opinion, just look at it from a different angle. I think if you look at the recent Reddit thread, Mustard gave a really good point. He said, you know what, let SOE look into it and let them handle it. But I've heard a lot of criticism about that too, saying, can SOE even, can they look at it? Do they have the ability to understand what's going on? But the thing is, like, where does it end, right? Where does it end? Because eventually you fall into like the slippery slope of ideas. You know, like, what will satisfy people to actually have like a really good resolution to the situation? Like, what would people need to feel comfortable and say, okay, no, I understand what's going on, so he is doing this, or I understand what's going on and he isn't doing this. And to me, honestly, it's such a slippery slope that I don't think there's almost anything that can be done, right? Because even, and this is the problem too, like when Sel was talking about it, like, say I'm in the observer cam here and you guys could see, so say one of these guys is Theorem. If he plays in a way that isn't 100% to what people think he's doing, they're gonna say, well, no, well, he's obviously not using what he's, you know, what he was doing in the matches, or he's not doing what he could, you know. Or if people see him doing something, you know, like, it's not gonna satisfy you. Like, how do you get satisfied in a situation where you feel so emotional about it? It's just, like I said, it's a tough situation, and the only solution that I think that could happen is just people have to be really smart about it. And, you know, it's just, like I said, it's one of those things that even if you had like a controlled environment where he was able to show what he needed to show, there would be maybe some slight things that he wouldn't do, and people just wouldn't be satisfied. So, I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. I don't know if you guys have any questions or anything in chat. I'm pretty much open. I had kind of some points I wanted to talk about, and I know I rambled a little bit, but hopefully it made some sense. I'm actually showing my face because I want to try and, you know, I'm talking about stories, I want to add a little human element to this whole thing. Yeah, okay, I heard somebody talk about exploit. Okay, so there's a lot of ideas, right, on what Ethereum is doing. And you could say that, it's more similar to wall jumping and less similar to, like, say, like a net limit or like hardware thing or software thing. If it is something that could be reproduced, and this is one of the good things about people talking about this. Well, obviously, one, people are talking about farmers, and two, that if this, it's like hacks or cheats in like a World of Warcraft, right? If one person's doing it, they could probably get away with it over and over and over again. But if 1,000 people are doing it, then it gets dealt with pretty quickly. So if this is something similar to, like, you know, it's something reproducible within the game, the more people that do it, yeah, it might break the game temporarily, but in the long run, it's healthy for the game. Because then SOE can look at it and decide, hey, a lot of this stuff is happening. We're either getting a lot of reports or a lot of attention. What can we do about this? What do we want our game to look like? And it's interesting to me because, like I said, there's so many questions about, is this something that And I heard, even Sell himself says that Ethereum is teaching other people. Is this something that other people can do? If they have like the right mindset or the right skill set. Because even in sports, there's been a lot of times where I've played, and it could be anything. It could be even just going to the park and playing, where you're just playing against that person. They can do things you just cannot do. And try as you might, I could sit in a basketball court, shoot 1,000 3-pointers, 1,000,000 3-pointers, and never be as good as a Larry Bird or a Michael Jordan, just because I'm not them. Whatever it is that makes Michael Jordan, it just can't be reproduced, right? That's why he's hailed as one of the greats. Or you look like a Lionel Messi in soccer. No matter how many, if I was a freaking immortal vampire and lived out for 10,000 years, I probably would never be as good as Messi. Some people just have this unique skill set. And I'm not saying that's necessarily true about Ethereum, but I'm saying it's a possibility that when somebody does something that you don't think is possible, there could be a reason for it. I mean, hell, look like an Einstein, right? And I'm just doing examples of people that did things or thought certain ways that wasn't, in tune with the times, but just pushed things forward. You look at the history of even competitive esports, like the players, like a Faker or somebody like that, they just push the meta in a way that people just didn't foresee, or they do things with like certain combinations of whatever it is, and you're like, how do they do that? What's going on here? And in the back of people's minds is always this question: are they cheating? Do they have information that we don't have? And so, because I think part of us as humans is it's really hard to accept that somebody is just that damn good. Regardless, I said, of whether he is Ethereum specifically doing something that he's not supposed to be doing, or cheating or hacking. I just think that ultimately, like I said earlier, just look at other aspects of it. Look at the history of recursion. Look at the history of what's going on. There's always a bigger context of stuff. Sometimes, it's good to be really specific. Like with your language, like when you're talking about like balance or meta or fairness. But sometimes if you get too focused on one thing, you lose sight of the bigger picture. And especially in this story, and it is a story, there's a lot, the picture is a lot bigger than what people think. And it's really easy to get, like I said, emotionally charged, and to get invested in something, and to roll with an opinion that you think is right, but really, it just isn't. Anyway, so that's it for that. I don't want to beat a dead horse. So the next thing that I really want to talk about, there's too much time I have. The next thing that I really wanted to talk about is Redeployside, and I'm actually gonna I'm probably gonna write articles on all this stuff and produce some content and give an opinion that's a little less rambly and more focused, so that people can understand what I'm thinking about. But so I'll have one probably on what I'm talking about now, and the second one is Redeployside. And I think a lot of the arguments about Redeployside talk about how it's really easy to go, just jump around the map without having to actually use the map. And what people, I think, fail to look at and understand is that Redeployside, and I wish I actually had looked at the history of the patches. Redeployside was something that happened through iterations. Like there was a lot of complaints, and I think SWA2 was trying to like help players actually find fights. There was a lot of complaints about not being able to find fights, or taking too long, or whatever it was. So Redeployside isn't something that just has always existed. It was something that happened because the players asked for it, or SWA saw a need for it. Regardless, it was something that happened over time. And so when you think about the current state of the game on live anyway, or even like in a thing like Server Smash, all those happen as a result of what people asked for. And so like even tying in this idea of Redeployside to what I was talking about earlier, you have to understand the context of something. And so when you look at Redeployside in the bigger picture, kind of like if you looked at the whole Ethereum thing in the bigger picture, you'd understand that, like I said, there's more to the story. And the story is that this is what players wanted, or SWA thought that this is what players needed to be able to find fights. And there's been a lot of really good points on Reddit. There's been actually, I mean, you kind of have to sift, through the sand and find the diamonds. But there's been a lot of really good points as far as, why Redeployside, it has negative aspects to it, and then there's some that say why Redeployside has positive aspects to it, right? One positive aspect is if you only have time to play for 20 or 30 minutes, you could hit U, like I'm doing now, or whatever your button is to redeploy, and within minutes be in a fight. Excuse me. Okay, so I hit redeploy, and I could almost within minutes be close, or if not in the fight, close to a fight, right? So I could redeploy here, and I can start shooting at things, which is awesome. Now, the negative aspect of it is the players who play for the map, right? They play the alerts, so they're leading platoons. Let me get out of this. I'm actually at Miller, by the way. That's why my connection quality says bad. Yeah, 300 ping. It was the busiest server, so I figured I'd jump on. And I think talking about Redeployside 2, and it's not as emotionally charged as the whole Therum thing, but there are a lot of statements talking about how it breaks the game, or it's fundamentally flawed. And I think when you look at the way patches have been going, and especially like the dedication, recently to getting this game out on the PS4, it's really interesting when you talk about the possibilities of where this game could go, right? Within the context of Redeployside, like is SOE going to completely change the system? Are they going to refine the idea of redeploying? And Matt Higbee, the creative director, actually brought out like a really interesting idea as far as making the map or the continent a little more meaningful to people by allowing bonuses based on like base captures or base defenses, or making territory have like this kind of incremental bonus to people. And then I think it really ties into the idea too, like Territory 2.0, where if you look at the map, it was almost created with the way that every base on this continent, or even if you look at other continents, has outliers, right? Or whatever it is you want to call these bases on the outside. So there's a lot of really interesting things that that could be done with the map that almost seems like it was designed that way from the start. Sorry. Damn. I was really sick this past week. I think one of the points too, and I used to think about it as well, is that tying in Redeployside to the resource revamp 2.0, tying in Redeployside to meaning, to meta, to strategy, and there's a lot of things that can be done for the game, and that's why I think, especially, I was kind of hesitant, kind of changing topics really quick. I was kind of hesitant about the idea of Spitfire turrets, because you're taking a game that's 100% PvP oriented, 100% player driven, and adding an element that is essentially, you drop something and it does work for you, But after playing on the PTS and seeing the way the SOE is iterated on the Spitfire turret, seeing how it's progressed, I'm really excited for the future of the game. I think, regardless of what you think about SOE's patch history, pretty much around this time, every year, since the start of the game, there's been something major, like a shift, right? I think, the first year, or guys, like OMFG happened around the same time. I believe it was last year, or even like the year before. There's always been some like direction, some clear, and whatever you want to say about the rap, there's always been something really clear that's happening to the game that really bodes well for it. And so I think, especially like with the Spitfire turrets, like it's going to add a really cool element to the game. It's just one of those things too that you really, I don't even know how they predict it. 100%, you really can't know what the outcome of it's going to be, right? Because there's been a lot of comments, not compliments, about how the Spitfire turrets are weak in a 1v1. But Planetside, this game, how often are you in a 1v1? And so it'll be really interesting to see how the players react, how the players use these things, how, like we were kind of talking about Therum, they push the use of the Spitfire turret, how they use it in ways that were unintended, how they use it in ways that the developers themselves couldn't foretell. Because it is. I don't know. Like you would have to have like a I don't know, like some kind of weird ability to be able to tell exactly what's going to happen when you put it in the hands of thousands of players. And so I'm really excited for the future of the game, and I think there's a lot of really cool things in store. I'm excited a lot to see what happens when Planetside 2 gets on a PlayStation 4, and not so much because more people will be playing the game, but I'm really curious to see how, when you play with a controller, like the meta of the game kind of evolves. Like maybe certain weapons will be better with a controller. Like on the PC, basically your high rate of fire weapons are king, because most of the fights, except something like this, most of the fights are close quarters combat. But with a controller, obviously your control scheme's different. And how are the pilots going to fly? Because I'm sure the air game is going to be completely different. Or maybe people will default to like coyotes because it'll be easier instead of aiming your primary weapon. But I think at the end of the day, accuracies, even with aim assist, probably be lower. Headshots might be lower. So the game itself is going to develop in a different way. So I think to the point where when you play on PC, you'll be playing one version of Planetside 2, but when you play on the PS4, you'll be playing a whole different version. And I don't mean patch-wise. I just mean the way that the culture of the game or the community has evolved. And that's why I think too it's really important when you talk about somebody or when you talk about an outfit that you realize that they're part of your community too. I mean, unless somebody was outright like hacking, you know, like there have been some people. It's been a lot less recently. That it's important because I mean we all are here. You know, you watching this, me talking about this because we enjoy this game, and part of that is too is because we enjoy the community. I mean, I really enjoy this community, regardless of where it goes. I've had a lot of fun at the SW Lives. I've had a lot of fun talking to the devs, and so when you're talking about, you know, farmers, or you're talking about like a server smash, or you're talking about the live server, there's always somebody listening, you know, and so it's really important to think about what it is that you're saying. Anyway, I'm gonna open it up to chat, see if there's any questions. So I'm looking at chat right now. There's gonna be a little awkward dead time here. Somebody asks, hi, if I may ask, how come PS2 is not going to any other consoles? I really can't answer that, but I would say that because the PS4 is PlayStation and PS2 is SOE. There's probably a correlation there. Okay, there isn't really much going on in chat as far as things I could talk about. So I guess, I mean, that's pretty much going to wrap it up. I really don't have anything to say. I mean, if I start talking now, it's pretty much just me rambling, and I'm really, really good at rambling. So unless you guys have anything you really want to talk about in chat, I'm going to shut the stream down a little early today and suck some more cough medicine. Oh, okay, so Aerodactyl brings up a really good question. And this kind of ties into the whole concept of bullying and being, you know, mature and actually talking about things with a level head. He asked the question, this kind of public person, you're within the PS2 community, how did you get there? So really, the reason I'm here is because I talked about Planetside 2. It's that simple. Like, you could do it in any way. You know, there's all kinds of formats that you can do. Like, I started writing articles for the Mitani. I've been involved with 2 outfits. I was outfit leader of 2 outfits. I talk to a lot of people, but essentially I share what I think with the community. You know, and I think the whole idea is that there's this saying, right, where a pleasure shared is a pleasure doubled. You know, there's obviously the inverse to that, but the idea is that I really want to share something that I'm passionate about, and hopefully people talk about it, or they see something that I did that maybe they didn't know, or you look at like more like people that produce instructional videos on YouTube. You know, they essentially just said, hey, I want to talk about this, and they produce content, be it video, be it a stream, or an article, or whatever it is. And I wish, honestly, that the Planetside 2 community had more of that, had more people willing to talk about Planetside 2. You know, had more people willing to talk about farmers outside of a context of like the recent controversies, or a server smash, or live server gameplay. You know, or I wish there was more talk going on, more conversations, because like I said, if you really have, you know, the ability to, like I said, upgrade to listen now, to actually listen to people, there's a lot of really cool stuff out there, a lot of really good people producing content, and I think it's really interesting because the Planetside 2 community is very small, but the content, the level of content has been produced. I mean, you look at like the Lil Babs videos, or I forgot the other guy. It's on the launcher. There's another video, Into the Sky. Just the quality of videos that have been produced for Planetside 2. Even when you go back to like the command centers with Matt and Tramel, I mean, just the stuff that's been put out there, you know, for such a small community is pretty amazing, and it's really compelling. When will HT rise from the grave? Probably never. Let me see. Oh, PSBL, thoughts on outfits participating. Okay, that's another really, yeah, Cheese. She says, content is good, yeah, community likes to rip each other's throats out. That's honestly, that's just the internet community in general. You know, like, and it's one of the cases where if your name is out there, if you're in the limelight, for whatever reason, right? If you're Ethereum, if you're like a Rel or even me or anybody, even the developers themselves, you get a lot of flack from a lot of people. I think it's just par for the course. But I'm glad kind of in the Planetside 2 community it's not so bad as other communities, and it might be just because the community is a little bit smaller. But I just hope that, you know, there's a bit less trolling, you know, and a little more sincere interaction between people. But there was a question here. Okay, Planetside battles, outfits participating. I think it's awesome. I think, yeah, there's some people saying that there's drama because they stole the idea, and I'm assuming you mean the 12v12s. They stole the idea from PAL. But honestly, it's like make or break for me. I mean, if you have the ability to run an event and people participate in your event, do it. Because the thing about the Planetside 2 community is, yes, there's been a lot of SOE support, but the drive, the idea, has all been from players like me, like you watching, somebody that just said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And then they get other people that say, yeah, let's do that. And so I think it's really great that it's actually happening. And I know Passionate Lover is producing some YouTube videos. So I said, dude, anything that involves Planetside 2, you know, as long as it's, you know, meaningful or, you know, funny or whatever it is, it could be just like even a control video. I think it's awesome for Planetside 2. So, you know, and I think it's great too because outfits get to play in a competitive format, unlike a server smash, you know, where you basically, even in a 12v12, it's a lot tighter. And you could talk to, you know, some of the guys in chat right now, guys or girls in chat right now, talk about that intensity, that adrenaline you get when you play in a smaller, you know, 6v6 or 12v12 format. It's pretty addicting, and it really changes the way you think about Planetside 2 because you have live, and then you have like the competitive side of it, regardless of whether it's 288 versus 288 or 6v6. And these two, while they use the same mechanics and based off the same gameplay, are completely different beasts. And I really encourage anyone that's interested to either join an outfit or form a team and get involved in something, whatever format it is. Is Nook ready to get wrecked for the reunion? So recently, for those of you that don't know, really quick. Okay, in Planetside 1, I was in Hostile Takeover. I got recruited. Eventually, let's go back to the beard cam because I wasn't showing any good gameplay. Okay, back to the beard cam. In Planetside 1, I got recruited by Hostile Takeover. I want to say early on release, and then eventually got to the point where I led Hostile Takeover for about a year, and then I left. I moved to Argentina. I just left the country, you know, just whatever. And then Planetside 2 came around, and I played the beta, and eventually it got to the point where I led Hostile Takeover and Planetside 2, and then Lithka and I formed Recursion, and then I left Recursion and joined Nuck. And Nuck is to me something special. And it mostly had to do, well, no, it had almost 100% to do with the leadership of it. Not just Zoid, but people like Ponyboy, people like Serho, and all these guys. And when the outfit was, to me, something that I've never seen in Planetside 2. I mean, even when I was in Recursion, like Recursion was at that, it's about like a year ago, Recursion was trying to get to the point, you know, unknowingly, where Nook eventually got, which is a platoon that operated differently. When we're talking about live server, a platoon that operated differently than any other platoon that I've seen. In most platoons, you'll have the platoon leader decide something. I'd say, okay, we're going to attack this base. And so, but in Nuck, the squad leaders had a voice. And so it operated on a whole different level. And the quality of the players, the effort put into the, you know, improving their gameplay and their knowledge, and just the time invested with Nuck was really impressive. And I'm actually really glad, I'm really happy that I was a part of Nuck, because I learned a lot about leadership. I learned a lot about what, you know, from platoon level, alpha lead, to squad lead, to even just being a grunt in a squad. I learned a lot, and it was pretty amazing. You know, even me, because I'm not very good at Planetside 2, like I'm like average at best. I played the role of passive medic, which meant basically my job was to keep everybody alive, and I really enjoyed that role. And when you look at a thing like Farmers now, how it's kind of evolved into like, you have your infiltrator, and then potentially light assault, and then you have your heavies, but not every heavy is the same. that's kind of built into the competitive aspect of Planetside 2, be it live or competition. And so I actually got a taste of that in not, but on a grand scale, right, in a platoon scale. And I'm really happy that Zoid messaged me and said that, hey, you know, I want to do a reunion, and I hope a lot of guys show up because it should be really fun. And I think that, well, no, I know that Nuck won't operate at 100%, but regardless, it's going to be really, really fun because, like I said, like you meet players in every outfit. You know, people are in outfits for a reason, regardless of who your outfit is, because you like playing with the people that are in that outfit, right? You log on to your Mumble, you log on to your TeamSpeak, and you have a really, really good time. And I think maybe almost that, more than anything else, keeps players playing video games, right? Whatever game it is, because of their community, because of the people that are in the outfit. And me, like, I had a really good time with Nuck, and I'm more happy to actually be able to be on a TeamSpeak with these guys than I am to actually be playing the game with them, if that makes any sense. Let's see if there's anything else. I got some time. But yeah, we're ready to to answer your question, yes, we're ready to get wrecked. It should be fun. Okay. Lady Lena says, ever since launch, I heard people talking about PS2 being a permanent beta for console. Do you expect a positive growth of PS2 in its community, or will it fail on console? I honestly think that's a really, really intriguing question. I don't agree that Planetside 2 was a beta for the PS4. I think honestly, when you say that statement, you're insulting the devs that have been working on Planetside 2. You're basically saying that what they've been doing is kind of like cooking, right? When you don't know what exactly you're cooking, you're just kind of throwing ingredients in there, and maybe you taste it, maybe you like it, maybe you don't. I think everything that's happened in Planetside 2, regardless of what level of iteration it's at, like the resource revamp and stuff, has been something that's been, you know, done via a lot of hard work. You know, a lot of time spent making the game, a lot of time spent talking about the game, like Command Center, you know, your F&Os. So there's been a lot of time and effort put into this game. And so when you say that, and I know why people say it, that Planetside 2 on PC is just a beta for the console, it's really kind of cheapening the experience, you know, and cheapening the idea that, not the idea, but the fact that these, you know, people put a lot of time into this game. But PS2 on the PS4, I think it's going to be really, really interesting because obviously there's never been a game like this on a console. And I always think the first thought in my head when I think of PS2 on PS4 was the idea, like you would see the streams about console players. Like I think they took the game to like an MLG, I believe Anaheim, but you would see the stream of like a console player playing the game, and they would spawn at Warpgate and then just like run, right? Because that's what you do in like in a Call of Duty or Battlefield. You spawn and then you run, you know, to where the action, or where you think the action is. But in Planetside 2, if you spawn at the Warpgate and run, you're going to be doing a Forrest Gump. You're going to be running for a while. And so it's going to take a lot of time for players to catch on. But I mean, think about like your experience with Planetside 2. The first time you were in an outfit, or even lone wolfing, and the first time you actually did something knowing exactly what you were doing, be it like a drop on a base, or being, you know, practicing a mosquito and actually killing somebody in the air. So there's going to be a lot of first time experiences played out on the PS4, and I think that's really exciting because you're going to see a lot of guys, or you know, players I should say, in an outfit or in a squad say, hey, I think we should do this, and then having it actually work out, whether it be like a spawn beacon or a galaxy drop, and they're going to be having like the excitement of it, which is, I mean, we've been doing it for what, 3 years now. So I want to say we're jaded, but you're used to it, right? Like you expect certain outcomes from jumping on a base. Either you're doing it just to farm, or you're doing it to hold, or whatever. But to the Planetside PlayStation 4 players, a lot of this is going to be new. And so, like I said, I'm really curious, like I was saying earlier, how the game is going to evolve. You know, what the server setups are going to be, and just essentially how it's going to play out. Like I'm almost tempted to get a PlayStation 4 myself just to see that. Let's see if there's anything else. We have a few minutes, so this is pretty much doing it live. Yeah, FFX Raw says, I'd really like to do some cinematic stuff about this beautiful game. Before observer cams kind of became like the status quo for a lot of these really, really beautiful videos, players were innovative, right? They would have long shots with an infiltrator, you know, crouch via a sniper rifle, removing the HUD, or they would be kind of, you know, steady cam with the ESF. So there's a lot of things depending on your creativity that you can do that aren't necessarily hinged upon using an observer camera. Sorry, my phone's vibrating. Okay, Flaxseed says, I have mostly used the TR so far, and I would like to get into the NC. However, I haven't been able to find a good outfit. Any suggestions for an active, strategical NC outfit? Well, first off, I think you have to be careful when you use the word strategical. There's certain assumptions based on that. But I think what you mean is an outfit that uses the map, that uses galaxies or sunderers. But the idea, and this is something that's actually really interesting. I could almost dedicate an entire hour to talking about this. Outfits approaches to the game, right? There's this idea that like the strategic or tactical or map-oriented outfit is this. Then you have outfits like, you know, like your Future Crews and AC that are like super like small but highly skilled outfits that are apparently like supposed the antithesis of this kind of outfit. And there is some truth to that, because I've been parts of outfits or their public platoons, and the approach to the game, the problem is that this is the strategic outfit is looked at as slow, and these outfits, these small, really intense infantry only outfits, seem looked at as fast. And it's true, they redeploy fast, they move fast, they get to the heart of the combat right away. And a lot of the idea about the strategic outfit is that they're slow because they either redeploy slowly or they take too long to actually get to the fight. And so I think of these outfits, these large outfits like your AODs, ADKs, you know, well, if they learned how to be faster and learned how to actually influence fights more, instead of, you know, trying to influence the map, influence the fight, focus on the fight, be faster, you know. And a lot of that actually has to do with your squad leaders. That's what I'm saying. That's why I thought Nuck was so special, that when your squad leaders are on the ball, you know, Johnny on the spot talking them to their squad, saying, okay, we need a medic, we need this, we need that, it really pushes people to look at the game a lot differently. Because if I just say, hey, I'm a platoon leader, let's get 4 galaxies and move here, that's pretty damn vague. And so when you're talking about joining a strategic outfit, just be aware that the idea is to be faster, always faster. And I think a lot of outfits, once they get the idea, like I said, to influence fights and to focus on that it could change the game. I mean, it could change the entire meta of a continent fight, right? If your large outfits actually were able to influence alerts more, there's actually an alert tracker that you could look at, and you could see the statistics for outfits, for individual contributions. And so, to answer your second part, to look for an NT outfit, I would actually go to the official forums, there's recruiting forums, and just look through that, and just join outfits. I mean, tell them, hey, this is what I want to do. Do you do this? I mean, if you find that kind of more methodical, plotting approach to the game to be attractive to you, then do it. I just think I love speed. I love mobility. Let's see if there's anything else. Zethian says, I want to find an outfit that drops whole platoons on empty bases. Any suggestions? Well, you know those bases might not be so empty. I don't know. I think that's it. I don't see anything else in chat, and I know there's been a lot of awkward silence here in the past few minutes of this stream. So I'm going to be shutting it down. Like I said, actually I should turn on the light. So the main talking point, the too long didn't watch, right? One, there's a saying my wife likes to say, right? When you point a finger, there's 3 pointing back at you. And so the idea behind that is just think about what it is that you're saying. Don't just assume that what people are saying are in fact truth. You know, just like what I'm saying is my opinion. You know, formulate your own opinion about things and be smart. 2, Redeployside. I think there's a lot of, I kind of like where it's at actually, and considering the resource revamp, the potential territory 2.0, Matt Higby's ideas, I think there's a lot of potential built into the game right now that could just be shifted, you know, with some code to make the game a lot more, I don't want to say compelling, but a lot more dynamic, you know. And 3, outfits. Just always, like I said, almost tying into what I was saying earlier, just when you join an outfit, the important part, the most important part of any outfit, regardless of whether you're fast or slow or methodical or infantry based only, is that you have fun. If you could log on to a mumble and have some laughs, you know, or vent your rage and be with people who kind of understand you and are willing to put up with you, that's a good outfit. You know, I don't care if your outfit KD is a .0001. If I logged into that outfit and I was part of that outfit and I was laughing and having a good time, it would not matter to me, man. Because at the end of the day, this is a video game and you're logging on to enjoy yourself or to decompress or relieve stress. And fun does that. Laughing does that. I mean, I don't know if there's any better medicine than laughter. I just wish it kind of cured my cold or my flu, whatever the hell it is I have. Anyway, that's it for me. Thanks for tuning in. Tomorrow at 3:15 p.m. Pacific is the finals for your farmers. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of drama regardless of what I say, but it's good. I think ultimately it's good for the game. It gets people talking, and at the end of the day too, like, you know, a conversation, you could, you know, produce some results just by talking to people. So tune in tomorrow. It'll be on twitch.tv/PS2Farmers. The Twitter for farmers is at PS2Farmers, I believe. There's also some Planetside battle stuff going on. I'm not exactly in tune with that, so, but just to be aware that there's a lot of stuff happening that isn't just happening on live server, right? There's access to Jaeger, thousands of accounts on Jaeger. You could always talk to the Server Smash subreddit, get involved with your community. I mean, as somebody asked earlier why or how I got here, and it's because I talked about the game and I put stuff out there. You know, I just realized that if you put yourself out there, that you might get some flack. Just be strong. All right, guys, that's it for me. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.
Connected.
Yeah. Crap, dude.
Yes, he did. He thought that I had left the Twitch. And somebody was like, well, you know, what do I do? Do I watch streams and all this? And nobody said, like, should I watch Dis's? Distort offered the information. Don't watch Dis's stream. You won't learn anything from him. Go watch... Distort said that, yeah, last night. I came on and said, hey, Distort, when are you going to go join Recursion? And yeah, everyone, he's right. Don't watch my stream. I'm sick of the guy, man.
That's pretty shitty. Shitty. What up, kid?
Juice, you tell Distort whatever you want to tell him.
Channel Alpha.
Right.
Agreed.
Dude, hold off, please. I'm not saying anything right now.
Why is somebody who's been in AC for 6 months trying to tell Juice how to behave?
Do you guys want me to leave?
Very true story.
You get your shit together. You need more time on your belt, Juice.
Channel Alpha.
How long ago has it been, Juice? It's a number. Yeah.
Juice has been with us since PS1.
I don't know,
Juice
like
was
years.
one of the first. I mean, you were 2003.
Yeah.
He was one of the founding fathers.
I mean, Vissy, you were what, 2004? I was 2005. Juice is old school. You know, nobody puts Juice in the corner.
I date back to A-Pop and Ian, or the Burger Brothers.